Hi, this is Marty Wilkinson with the PeaceGiver Project. I'm here with Katie Hansen. And again, you can find us at PeaceGiverProject.com or the same Instagram and Facebook handle, PeaceGiver Project. And normally, Katie would be asking me questions. She would give a brief background. And today I have a couple questions for Katie surrounding her abuse. In my case, both my ex and I, we were confronted by friends and family about the abusive behavior of each other. They would say, "Oh, well, why are you still with him? He's being abusive. He's hurting you." And my family would say, "Well, why are you still with her? She's abusive." You know, my mom has walked in when she was throwing a big heavy bowl. I forget what she threw at my head, but it shattered against the wall. And I can laugh at it now. It was not funny at the time. But then it was played off, and she lied about it. Said, "I didn't throw that." It's like, well, who did? You're the only two people in the room, and he didn't. He couldn't have done that alone. But I would make excuses to my family. I would defend to my family her actions and why I should still be with her. And she did the same with her friends. She was confronted. I know she was confronted by many of her friends, who eventually they had to distance themselves to keep themselves safe emotionally from the situation. But they would confront her about my abusive behavior towards her and how unhealthy it was, and she would defend me. And I would like to get Katie's take on that. Obviously you have been the victim of physical abuse, and it sounds like you were confronted by, was it friends and family?
Mostly my family, mostly my sister. I lost a lot of my friends going into my relationship only because I wasn't allowed to be around them.
Right.
So mostly just my sister, mostly.
Okay. Why did you... So your sister knew that he was hurting you? Mm-hmm. Okay. How did she know? She's
not dumb. That's the honest answer.
Were there bruises or things like that?
There were. Mostly for her, because she lives in a different state. It was... She could hear the pain in my voice when she'd call and talk to me. We would talk about things that would happen, and I would explain it, but the way I would explain it, and the only reason I can answer it now this way is because I've worked through it, but then when I would explain it to her, it would be my fault. So I would justify his action in my answer to her. Well, I did this wrong, so this happened. And she's not dumb. She'd try and call me out on it or whatever else, and then that would make me angry, and then we'd shut down and just not talk. Yeah. So, yeah.
So, you knew that he was hurting you. You knew that it wasn't right.
At the time, you wouldn't know that it wasn't right.
Okay. Please explain.
So, when you're in the situation, you are so manipulated to believe that everything that's happening is for a reason. Let it be your explanation, your action, whatever it is. Whatever I did, I was truly meant to believe that I deserved what happened. So at the time, no, I didn't see it as a bad thing. I was blinded by manipulation, by control. So in my eyes, that was normal. I deserved it, and it was what it was. So
that makes sense. And part of the reason why I'm diving into this is because I actually did that. I manipulated, and I didn't want to take accountability at the time, so I would make her feel like it was her fault. And it's sad because it was a cycle in my family. Now, I was never abused by my parents. My grandfather, though, he was very abusive, very physically abusive. I mean, he beat me until I bled, and everybody pretended like nothing happened. But he would make me feel like it was my fault. He would manipulate me. So guess what I did? I did the exact same thing. That's what we want to stop. It is a generational thing. And when kids are raised in this environment, just like anything else. I see just like anything else. I mean, in Africa, in war-torn, Western Africa, that's what they think is normal. They think that a child wielding an AK-47 is, in parts of it, it's a normal thing, because guess what? It is a normal thing there. But that's not a normal thing in the rest of the civilized world. At least it shouldn't be. And it's not exactly the same here, but it's very much akin to it, because things that shouldn't be normalized suddenly become normalized, and you don't see it at the time. And you don't, but I did that. I did that. The sad thing is, I knew that I was doing it to her. When I was doing it, I knew that I was manipulating her. I knew that I was doing something bad, something shameful. And instead of facing it and dealing with my shame and my own insecurities and my own traumas as a child, that instead of actually dealing with them, I just passed it along. Like, poison or, a virus. I just, as opposed to, dealing with it and killing the virus, I just passed it on, because somehow that would, in some sick, demented way, make it better. Okay, so now you're confronted by your sister. You defended your ex to your sister? Mm-hmm. Like, what would you say?
That's a hard answer. Mostly it was always about me. So I would say things that would happen, but like I said, I would justify it with my actions first. So I learned that if I would say, well, I didn't have the kids in bed by a certain time, so this happened. Or I asked if I could go out with my friends, so this happened. So I always made sure that I put my actions first before I expressed anything that he did. And I would justify his actions with my demeanor or the things that I was doing, because I felt like that was right.
So you would preface by saying why it was, by explaining why you were at fault before responding really to what he did. Mm-hmm. Okay, why did you defend him?
Because I loved him. And that's the short answer. So growing up, for me, I had a great childhood. My parents are still married. I have an older sister. We do everything together, travel, great. But I grew up that marriage was very sacred. Marriage is something that you're excited for and should be honored. And I saw my parents fight. Everybody does, but I always saw the aftermath of everything was okay and they loved each other still. So for me, when I got married, we would fight, and my determination was, that's okay, that's supposed to happen, I still love you. So I would defend everything, because I truly believed in love, and I truly believed that that was the most important thing that there was. And I defended that for every ounce that I could.
That makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. I did that as well with my ex. Again, it was an interesting situation because we were both abusive. She punched me in the face. I didn't report it because, seriously, what dude wants to say that he was punched in the face driving down the road with his stoned wife? Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to admit that.
Yeah.
No guy, at least no guy that I know. I just didn't, And I left her as well. I didn't want her to hurt. Then I didn't want her to get in trouble. I didn't want her to get in legal trouble. Somehow there was some weird sick threshold of what I was willing to inflict. Although by that time I wasn't, at that time I was actually, that was a window where I was actually sober. And, which there's a difference between being sober and in recovery. Mm-hmm. I was not drinking. I was not actively working through my stuff, so I would stay sober. But I was at least not drinking, so I had some clarity where I was like, geez, I don't want her to hurt. I don't want her to at least face legal trouble. And then later I found out that, after getting into recovery, Some people just have to really fall hard. I did.
Mm-hmm.
I had to lose everything before I was willing to put in the work to get better. To the point where I wanted to check out. I did not want to be on Earth anymore. And there are a lot of people on both sides, both who have been abusive and who have been abused, who are so ashamed and they're so demoralized and their worth is so low. They either drink themselves to death, or they kill themselves either slowly with an addiction or quickly with a shotgun. A lot of people just check out because it hurts. Getting better hurts too. The process, there's no part of it that's really easy. I'm sure your healing process, even working through your working through your stuff with relationships,
Yeah.
it stings, especially when you have to be accountable and say, okay, well, I have to own that. And now what the hell do I do with that? And I don't know that we certainly don't have enough time to address all of that today. But when it comes to protecting people, that made a lot of sense to me. So what eventually was the tipping point to what finally got through to you?
So the night that I actually kicked him out of my house. So, little backstory with it. My father must have known something was going on because he bought us a house. But he bought this house in his name. So he always told me if it was something that was going to happen, the girls and I always had a place to be. And I never connected it. I always thought it was, oh, my daddy's so nice, But now looking back, I understand why he did those things. So it was our 3-year wedding anniversary, actually, and he decided he wanted to go play football instead of be with me. And I was at my parents' house, and I can't recount all the situation. It was just a huge blur. And I called him and was pissed, and he finally said, well, if you want me gone, you know what you have to do. So my dad and I showed up at my house, and he gathered all of his stuff. We gave him a car. He packed up my car, and he left. And then it was, as soon as that happened, that was my, oh no, what did I just do? All of that started to come back of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And it started to freak me out a little bit. So it took me a little while. Him and I actually worked in the same place. And we worked in different departments, but same buildings. And I went to an attorney, and I set my phone on the counter so that he could see how many times he would message me in a minute. And I looked at my attorney, and I said, I don't want any money. I don't want anything. He can have whatever he wants. He will share the kid. I just want to be happy. I don't want to do this anymore. And the emotional manipulation and everything continued. My phone went off more times than I could tell you in this hour meeting that I had with an attorney, and a few weeks later we served him papers, and that's when it even got worse. The manipulation and the control even got worse. So it was a 2-year battle of me having an attorney trying to share everything, not asking for anything, and him being in and out of jail before things were actually finalized. It took 2 years to do so. And then I was at every court date, I was at everything I could, and it just didn't matter. It was still a manipulation control game for him. So
Interestingly, at this point, there are actually a lot of parallels in our stories. Because I was in intensive outpatient. I'd been in for 2 months, which was nice because I was in, a controlled, safe environment. And I was not only sober, but I was actually in recovery, working the program. And I'd read The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and I became a student of that book. Especially, there are two parts of it that really spoke to me. One was, some people have a need to be abused, and especially if that's how they process love. If someone was raised in an abusive environment, and in her case, that's the only person she had in her life it sounds like, had some of that, she would push those buttons until there was a response, because that's how she processed love. And I thought, oh shit. And then I found out that's what she did with her first husband too. And I was like, oh man, that's bad. Mm-hmm. And then there was, the second one was the amount of abuse you're willing to dole out to yourself is exactly parallel to the amount of abuse you'll accept from somebody else.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. That blew my mind. I was like, oh, geez. I got to get the hell out of here. The next week, I was in front of an attorney, and within a couple weeks after that, she was served papers. And then, yes, it became a non-stop harassment. And it's still, it still is. It's still just, and it doesn't have to be that way. We could co-parent, we just don't. There's a protective order saying she can't call me, or, and it gets violated all the time still. But I'm like, well, I want her to be happy. I want to be happy, and it's like you said, I just want to be left alone. I want to be happy. Like you get battle weary from all of it. Interesting. So with your defense, because I defended a lot and had some of the same tipping points. Even when I was an intensive outpatient, there was a lot of manipulation. Oh, you need to come up here. We've got to get back together. We need to this. We need to that. And it was convenient for me because I was an intensive outpatient. Plus, I had my family. They were like, "Hey," my bell was rung hard enough. But in that time, from that point in time that I had filed, and it didn't make me feel good that she was also in and out of jail. I'd been in and out, clearly, I'd been in and out of jail for abuse, and she, proceeded to be in and out of jail for, alcohol-related issues. And I'm not passing judgment on that, because alcoholics don't get to pass judgment on other alcoholics. We don't. I don't pass judgment at all on her for that. All I've wanted to do is keep my boy safe. Again, I've noticed that amongst women, it's a lot more prevalent, in terms of the high protection of kids, just doing whatever it takes to batten down the hatches. What are you doing nowadays to break the cycle with your girls?
That's a good question. So my situation with my kids is a little different. My oldest is not my ex-husband's. Her father's doing his thing. And so she was about 4 or 5 when all this was happening. And she remembers it all. She knows. My youngest does not remember much of it. She would tell me that she remembers me telling her sister to take her in the closet and hide. Things like that. But I have tried very, very hard not to be the negative person. I don't say anything bad. There was a long time where she would cry because she missed her father or whatever, and that's a normal thing. So it would be, I'm sorry, people make decisions, but it's okay. Mom's here and I love you. So the hardest part for me has been that my oldest can remember, my youngest cannot. So my oldest obviously has very strong feelings of hate, even though we don't use that word around my house, towards him. So it's been a battle for me to help find a common ground for both of them. But it was a struggle for a long time because they did see me in and out of relationships and trying to fill a void for them. And I can say that now. I didn't know it at the time that that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to give them a whole family because I felt responsible for taking away that whole family. So it was just 3 of us, and I felt like they needed a father figure. And so recently, just past few years, it's finally been, no, you don't. They have a grandfather that loves them very, very much and is that man figure that they have. But it's they know that they can be very strong, independent women. They know now that they don't deserve anything that somebody gives to them. But in the same regard, they don't deserve to do those things to anybody else. So we have a very strong show kindness to everybody and love with your whole heart in my household. And I am very honest with both of them. They both know now more than they have where I've been, what I've been through, and obviously, you know, voicing my voice as much as I can. They've heard the stories, but then we can sit down and talk about it. So they understand that it's not okay. They understand the pain that I went through, and so hopefully I can help teach them to help teach others that those things are not okay. And just leading with kindness is all it's going to be, and they are strong and don't need to put up with anything. So
nice.
Yeah.
With my boys, it came about with some of this LGBTQ movement. And, you know, in school, there are a lot of kids say really a lot of derogatory terms.
Yeah.
In this case, their friends were using the word faggot. And one of my friends' sons came out of the closet, had just come out of the closet recently, and the circumstances were just devastating. I mean, some of his family members treated him so horribly, and it bothered me to my core. Like it made me cry. I was so upset because he's one of God's kids. You know, regardless of what your beliefs are, I don't really, you know, care if you agree, disagree. It's not my place to judge. That's between them and their creator if they believe in God. And if not, then he still loves them. He still loves them anyways. But it's not my place. My point is, it's not my place. And I explained to them, look, you don't get to be mean to people. I said, you know, the second great commandment is you've got to love your neighbor as yourself. That means you can show up to church every Sunday. You can fill your callings, you can serve in your church, but if you treat your neighbor like garbage, you don't get a pass. You are not cool with him. He is not cool with you.
Yeah.
And it feels so much better to just be loving and to, because people are not enticed, people are not attracted. You know, much like being attacked, saying, "Oh, you're wrong. You know, you're being abused, and you know, you're wrong." It's, geez. You know, there's a better way than attacking somebody. It's you love on them and you listen to them. And at any rate, so, you know, with my boys, and I talk to them a lot, you know, anybody in my family would tell you I'm on a protective scale from 1 to 10. I'm probably like 10,000. Not in an unhealthy way, but I don't let anybody manipulate my children. And I don't, and I treat my boys that it's okay to, well, as Brene Brown says in several of her books, you can speak truth to bullshit. You do not have to pretend that something that's bad is good just because someone else says so. You can still be respectful. You don't have to be a jerk. You don't have to be belligerent about it, but you can politely explain what it is and give it a name. And usually that shocks people enough. When you say what they're doing aloud, even in an abusive environment, that's one of the most powerful things that happened to me. Once someone gave it a name to me, then I couldn't ignore it anymore. It rang my bell so hard. It's like, oh shit, you're right. That's exactly what it is. I can't deny it. You know, I mean, I can deny it, but basically I'm ignoring reality, and then, okay, then so what, I'm a sociopath? Pass. You know, I don't want that. I don't want that. So, you know, again, a lot of what ultimately we'll want to do, you know, part of the PeaceGiver project is taking this message, granted in a age-appropriate way, into middle schools, so kids know how to identify and what to say and what to do without putting themselves in harm's way. Because when you're in a volatile situation, you know, kids didn't sign up for this. One thing that I realized very quickly in this abusive environment, because my boys saw all of the abuse on both sides. They saw it. They didn't see the physical side of it, but definitely the verbal, emotional. 100% they remember all of it. And they still have hard feelings about it. And I want to arm kids with the knowledge of giving it a name, or knowing who to turn to protect them and keep them safe. Because if we can, 2-3 generations from now, arm every kid in America in their middle schools with this information, I actually think that we can. I think to say we could decrease domestic abuse by 50% is conservative. I think we can do more by giving both boys and girls ages 12 to 15 the knowledge of what to say and do in those cases, and help them understand this is not normal. It's not healthy. It's not okay. That doesn't have to be a bad guy. That doesn't have to be a good guy. It's just unhealthy. Well, I've identified it. Now here's who I talk to. And that's what I'm doing with my boys, and it sounds like that's what you're, a lot of what you're doing with your girls. But again, we've had to go through a lot of hard knocks to reach that place. Mm-hmm. It was a really painful process. Yeah. And if we can spare kids from having to do that, having to grow up in an environment where they think that that's normal behavior, I really think that we can change. That's where I actually think that we can actually change the world here in doing what we're doing, starting with the kids. I hope that we can make a dent with victims and people who have been abused, but I think that where it's really at is in that age group of kids. Some of them will ignore it, but for a boy and a girl going to the same middle school, I'm hoping that if one of them ignores it in a relationship, at least the other one will have the good sense to listen and know what to do. That's why I think that 50% might even be a conservative decrease. At any rate, now I'm rambling. But it's exciting. That part gets exciting for me. I'm passionate about that. Thank you so much. If you've received any value from this, if you've received value, please share. This, abuse affects, I guarantee that if you're not in an abusive situation right now, there is someone that or someone within one block of where you live right now that is suffering. They're hurting. You might be hurting. You might have a family member that's hurting. And the only way that we can change this is to stop pretending that it doesn't exist. We have to actually not just speak up about it, but we have to actually do something about it. So please do please share. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Take care.